Hey folks, this is Dr. Brian King, and of course I'm doing another podcast, and I'm finally in my new studio in North Carolina. Although I don't have it set up completely, this will eventually turn into something that looks like a more regular studio space, kind of like what we had in Dallas, but obviously we've been relocated 1,000 miles east. This guy that we're going to talk to has been living abroad. He's an American that has moved to Costa Rica, started a company, fairly successful one at that, and we're going to talk to him. So, and by the way, next time I expect my walls are not going to be completely blank. We will fill in the studio and make it look more comfortable as we continue to unpack the boxes. There are lots of boxes. But without any further hesitation, let me bring in my guest, Mr. Richard Blank.
I'm here, I'm there, I'm everywhere. Blues, women, and blues. I'm here, I'm there, I'm
I used to live in Philly. I lived in Manayunk, and we might have even overlapped. But I really liked Philly. You left Philly, 27 years ago. You moved to Costa Rica or other places. In your own words, since I'm just summarizing and probably messing it up anyway. Tell me a little bit about yourself and tell my audience.
No, once again, I can't thank you enough for being interested in my story. But yes, it begins in Northeast Philadelphia. I'm sure you're very familiar with Abington, Rydal, and Jenkintown. That's where I grew up. Why did I want to leave? Because it was cold in the wintertime and there's slush. I wanted nicer weather.
That was not one of my favorite things about living in Philadelphia, I gotta say. There's a lot of places that are cold, but I've never had my car literally frozen to the road before. That happened to me in Philadelphia. And I was like, yeah, this is my last winter. I'm moving south. So I feel you on that.
But I tell you what, I'll take cold weather if you can offset it with some of the best people you've ever met in your life. I love my friends from Philly. I love my foundation. So it was good. And so my story took me to the University of Arizona. I was a Spanish major. So unlike a lot of my friends that went to Ivy League to study medicine, law, architecture, go into a family business, I doubled down on my favorite class. I know if I could be the only one that could do it, be versatile, it might be marketable. So in college, I interned for Telemundo. Post-grad, worked for the importers of Corona. And then when I was, you get jobs where you can put Se habla Español on a business card.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. Did you work on Sábado Gigante and all that stuff?
You're so funny. But I tell you what did get me the jobs and at least the consideration. When you see somebody with dedicated practice and structure and discipline, you have to admire big guns or someone that can paint or play the violin. And see a kid from Northeast Philly speaking Spanish, something was definitely happening there. And so they saw my potential. And what they did was balance the bike. They gave me some sort of focus and direction and professional courtesies and advice. And so when I moved to Costa Rica at 27, a friend of mine owned a center here. I was supposed to come down, doctor, for just 2 months to teach English. I fell in love with it. And I learned the business from the inside out, not at sea level. And I stayed there for 4 years just to learn it. And, when you go to a graduate school and you look at something differently through mature eyes, you might grasp it. You might get it. And the only thing that I didn't understand was how to do the paperwork and how to pay the bills. But I knew the people. Yeah. And if I could keep them motivated and focused and increasing their ability to be more self-reliant, being better speakers and an advanced vocabulary, then maybe I was doing my job. And it seemed to work. It was no resistance. It was like gravity or wind or even some current in the water. I don't have to paddle. I could sit back in a tube, me and you, just chilling. And so when life became easier, it maybe became smarter because I didn't have to work as hard. And so you don't become a CEO of a call center. You don't go to school for it. Most people would say not to sell your soul. But it's very lucrative.
Well, if you ask any kid what they want to be when they grow up, they're definitely not going to say that anything about a call center. It's a career I think that you stumble into because obviously there's a need and there's a demand and you have opportunities and you have exposures and you learn. I mean, hardly any of us can predict our career from day one. You know, you studied Spanish, and now you're doing this. You know, I studied psychology, and I'm doing this. You know, it just takes us in weird directions. You know, I will say that I'm like you in the sense that so I'm you know, you're Philly, I'm from New York. We both are Northeastern people who went to college in the Southwest and kind of, for whatever reason, fell in love with the culture. You know, I'm assuming you appreciate Spanish culture, because nobody majors in Spanish unless they love it. You know, so I went to college in Texas, and although I didn't major in Spanish, I became quite fluent, and I used to spend a good chunk of my time traveling, doing summers anyway, traveling through Mexico and Central America and stuff. There's a wonderful attraction to those cultures, you know, once you really get into it, you know, especially from an American perspective, you know. And so I can see the appeal of the way your life has taken you. And now you're permanently in Costa Rica. Is that what I'm understanding?
I'm married to Tika. I'm married to Central American exotic princess.
Wow.
Yeah, why would you want to leave spring break? I have it every day. I mean, I live here. But to just add on to your last point of what made me gravitate towards it, think of this, doctor, you're, you know, with psychology. I had constant stimulation. Spanish was a luxury trade for me because I could walk out of a classroom, and in Tucson, Arizona, I could be speaking 5 hours worth of Spanish everywhere to anywhere. So instead of having to download, bring equipment, travel somewhere, meet up, you got to be kidding me. This thing was left and right. I didn't even need to bring any art supplies with me. It was pure speech. And Spanish is a romantic language when you have the subjunctive tense, which shows you the desire and the doubt. So instead of thinking that you're speaking like Shakespeare and having romantic desks asking girls out on dates, no, it's a lot more expressive, and it keeps you more in the now, which is very interesting. While you're translating, it keeps you sharp. You start dreaming in Spanish. You enjoy reading in Spanish, watching the movies in Spanish. You feel culture. You do. And so if you meet somebody for the first time, and even though your Spanish isn't at their native level, but you're showing such good grace and good faith, oh, what a solid first impression it was for me. So instead of trying to angle in with a funny joke, doctor, or figure out something in the background to relate to you, I'm just speaking your language. And they realize by them speaking English how much you put into it. And so I put it this way, that's how I got most of my business. That's when I would speak with people, I didn't have to angle it. It's just relating
awesome.
with in that way.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I find that you know, when you speak the language, especially being an American, nobody expects Americans to speak anything but English, and we speak it poorly too. We're just not very good at it. But whenever we can adopt another tongue, and people really give us a lot of credit now. And the thing with the Spanish as the Romance language, I don't know that this is true. Although, as somebody who is somewhat bilingual and has some of those experiences, I feel like Spanish is more emotional. You know, I feel like when I'm speaking Spanish, I don't know, it just feels more like there's more raw emotion to the language, and maybe that's because of my limited Spanish vocabulary. And so, you know, but it does seem like to create more emotional connections. You know, is that what you think? Is that agree, or you do you feel the same way? Or
Of course. I mean, you could take a certain verb like tener, to have, and you could put it in a conditional tense. You can make it a command by saying ten, you know, and so these are certain things where you could manipulate it so many different ways. Well, just if you see things in color or in waves or in energy. And so, as I'm saying, it's least miscommunication and misinterpretation. And I've seen in my mind, when as a telemarketer, trainer, and watching people when they are able to go from English into Spanish, it's almost like spinach with Popeye. They power up, and their charm and their vocabulary, it's like a hot knife through butter.
Yeah.
So their numbers go through the roof. So listen, doctor, if you get a wiffle ball pitch from time to time, you should take it. And so I wanted to open up certain doors for me where I'm not learning a very specific language, like Chinese, for an example. There's some Chinese people here, but it's not enough to make a dent. And that's why a lot of people that study German and French in high school, they're not really using it now. I mean, where are you going to use it?
Yeah.
And so for me, I was trying to be practical. I think there's a chance I can use this somewhere.
Yeah, that one trip that you take to Germany after college, but then everybody speaks in English when you get there. You're running now a call center. That explain that. Is it? I imagine it's a room full of people with headsets and phones. Is that kind of what you're doing?
Cold call closing, just like Blake and Glengarry. No, I'm only kidding. No, it's a dedicated center. These agents work on specific campaigns with clients in the United States. We work with customer support, lead generation, appointment setting. But doctor, I'll tell you 5 campaigns I don't do. We don't work with sports books, casinos, stocks, pharmacies, or sweepstakes. It's a strict Catholic country. You, as a traveling man,
is that just your own standards, or you just don't have the clients?
It's my standards.
Yeah.
There's plenty of ways to make money out there, and I have nothing against it. I like gambling saloons. Yeah, that's cool. But I am in a strict Catholic country, and I want to make sure that when someone goes home, they can tell their parents what they do for a living. And you've heard the stories, and that's what gives call centers and telemarketers a bad rap for these scams that they do.
Yeah.
And you have exceptionally talented speakers on the phone with such skills, soft skills. But unfortunately, like fire, instead of using it for light and for warmth, they burn people. And that's not right. And so they really, if they have that sort of marketability, they should be able to have the ability to choose where they want to work. They have options. We'll choose something better. So you have more longevity to it, and you can do the right thing.
Whether or not you're whatever kind of clients you work with, that's up to you. But it's admirable to even have that idea that guiding sort of ideology that underlies your business.
Sure.
I think that if you have the people and you have the facilities, and there is really not a lot of barriers between, okay, guys, now we're going to do robocalls and try to get people on scammy Bitcoin. So I'm glad that that's not what you're doing. But you're in Costa Rica now. Is this are these clients that are hiring you hiring like Spanish speakers, or are you actually have a room full of English callers?
Majority English. They need to have 80% proficiency. And I don't mind an accent. It's like a beauty mark, like Ricardo Montalban on Fantasy Island. I just want to make sure they have a good grasp of vocabulary and they have active listening skills, because that's what can frustrate the people the most and cause egos to be bruised. But no, these people are exceptionally talented in regards to their typing skills, being able to manage a CRM or a data system. They can convert calls, they can retain clients, they can do upsells, and even in worst case scenario, get an exit interview to find out, doctor, what you and I could have done differently to keep the client. That's how things have changed post-COVID. And I don't blame them about people wanting to be virtual, but it's ruined the synergy of a center, because I'm from the 70s and 80s. I like when coaches would high-five you, and you'd sit at a table in the lunchroom with your buddies and swap stories.
Yeah.
Even if people are sitting with each other now, doctor, they're looking at their phones. They're not engaged.
Yeah.
And so if today, the younger labor pool, if they prefer to be virtual, they prefer to do things via chat and to be coaching that way without coming in on site, which I understand transportation time and cost. But if they want to distance themselves and not have that buddy that you and I have, where we can share that electromagnetic energy, and I'm being dead serious on that. That gets taken away, but then again, it offsets it with comforts and money and luxury.
Yeah.
But it's gone. It used to be a painting, now it's a print.
Yeah.
It can still give you that sort of emotion, but there's a huge difference
Yeah.
of when you're standing next to somebody and you can prevent things, doctor. I can see things here, or I can give them a timeout so they can have a coffee, play a game of pinball, or just vent. If somebody is alone and they're isolated, the chances are you're going to miss those marks. And so for me, preservation is very important for the people, especially in this industry, which is so demanded.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me to compete, I got to almost let it go. And it's very difficult for me. But then again, guess what, man? A lot of people don't like 80s musics and they don't care about Pac-Man. And what do you want me to say? I mean, I grew up at a different time like you did.
Right.
And the things that we do are passé. They almost look at me as like a novelty. It's like, oh, it's kind of funny. You shake hands. Okay.
Well, it is true. And there, I often talk about this. There's no substitute for face-to-face contact with people. Being in the same room, being the old school way of doing things. And you go to an office, you work, you have coworkers that you can talk to, immediately. Yeah, sure, you can call people, you can FaceTime. It's just not the same as having that in those in-person interactions. However, I do really appreciate this technology. I prefer to do all of my podcasts in person. Like that. Yeah. My preferred way to do this interview right now would be for me to be traveling through Costa Rica, pop into your office, play a couple of games of pinball. You know what I mean? That's just the way I like to do it. But it's not always logistically possible, and so this kind of stuff does at least allow us to be able to accomplish that. Now, if I were to rely solely on this, if I were to do this all the time and I'm just nothing but talking to my computer, every single time I do a podcast, A, I would lose interest. B, I would lose my mind, and C, I don't know. I don't know what else would happen. I think I would just, at some point I would just lose my ability to interact with people, So, we can't rely completely on these types of technologies. It's good to get people together in an office and working and doing what interacting with people in the real world as opposed to this new technology we have. But the technology is not all bad. It's just a matter of how much you use it,
It's impossible to shadow.
Yeah.
I mean, doctor, you're sitting there, I could put two freshmen next to you, and while you're working, that's how they learn. Yeah. And so a lot of it, you might call it old school, but sometimes someone needs to show you how to hit a golf ball. You just can't do it off of YouTube or by yourself. And I understand people are self-taught, but that's the rare one. That's Slash from Guns N' Roses. You know what I mean? And guys that just played with those guitars and stuff back in the day. But that's not for everybody. And so what pains me, and it's a selfless thing, is I'm trying to pay it forward, like passing the candlelight to another candle. And so just the kids today, it's like a feral cat. They'll come and they'll drink milk, and you might even be able to pet them from time to time, but don't expect to domesticate or have them come in your home. And so for me, I'm trying to find that healthy balance to not scare them away, and also to let them know that you and I don't misconstrue anything. It's just honorable intentions, what we're trying to do here.
When you first set up shop in Costa Rica, was that an extension of the work you had done before, or were you just starting completely fresh?
Fresh as can be, and I was very responsible. I was lucky, doctor. I could rent a turnkey station at a blended call center, which is like a internet cafe times 10. Mm-hmm. And so I could scale accordingly. I could pay what the cost is, pay their salary and benefits, and make a margin. And is it fancy? No. But in the course of 2.5 years, I was able to build some capital and stable clients. And then I rented space where I could purchase used equipment because there's a rotation of centers. So, doctor, I'm getting brand new Dell computers that might be like a week old that someone might have opened the box for, 30 cents on the dollar. And I could build out rooms at a time. And then after 6 years, I was busting out of that. I couldn't grow anymore. So then I just like Richard Dreyfuss and Let It Ride. Put it down on me again. And so I put all of my money and I bought a corner lot in Barrio Aranjuez, a beautiful section of town, by the universities and the train line, easy for the agents. And I put on a third floor, made it Art Deco. And just like our old style, I had neon lights and marquees, vaulted ceilings. I made it pretty nice. If you're going to do it once, do it right.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. That's very cool.
And it took me, today we're on our 17th year. So I do not want you or your audience to think that I'm that overnight sensation like these young kids that do these apps or influencers. No, man, this was the grind. This is what it's like when you invest in a career, and there's prices to be paid. But I never overextended myself, doctor. Never had a shady partner or had a mortgage or did something where I had to make unethical decisions or desperate decisions, because you should always have reserves, like acorns for the winter for the squirrel. Yep. And if you do that, you can rest at night and then make very good decisions and game plan.
Now, yeah, there's a lot of people don't understand. Like, I'm making lots of money. I'm making this ton of money. It's not always going to be the case. What about a few months down the road when things slow down? You got to be able to weather out that storm.
We always do. Yeah. They always do. Come on.
Yeah, I'm a big advocate for trying to be as debt free as absolutely possible. I think that's just we've gotten so used to the idea of being in debt that most people don't even mind it, even though they're drowning in it or barely keeping themselves afloat. And then of course companies overextend, and as soon as you lose a few clients or something shifts in the market, next thing you know, you're either borrowing against the companies or trying to split shares, or it's tough. It's tough on any level. So that's a good way to do business too. That you're building from the ground up and you're not accumulating any debt along the way. Yeah,
but how embarrassing! I had to act my wage. I'm still driving the car that I bought when I first started this company. I got a 1992 Cabriolet. Oh yeah, I got a chillin' convertible. Why would I want any other car? And so, like Warren Buffett living in his house.
Yep.
Why don't you calm down a minute?
Right.
Dr. King will still be my friend if I don't have a Rolex.
Right.
And I think you'll respect me more when you come into my call center and you see that I have 3 rows filled compared to putting in 100 rows. Overextending myself. It's like, I never understood some of these real estate developers. Why don't they just finish the one building at a time? Right. There's always 7 buildings that are halfway done, and it never made any sense to me. And so for me, I just wanted to do the rows like Monopoly, slow and steady. It's not glamorous, damn it. Really not. And it's just like laying brick.
Hey, the one thing that you might be a little indulgent on, you wrote to me about this. I thought this was kind of interesting. You have the largest collection of pinball machines. So is that sort of a collection that started before, or is something you just started collecting when you came down there?
Tom Hanks in the movie Big. Once he got that first paycheck, he got a trampoline in his apartment. You know what I mean?
Is that what it was? You just started.
Yeah, I think he had a pinball in an arcade. Yeah, I think he had a pinball in there. Yeah. Big ball to kick around. And remember the scene where they're jumping out of the window and stuff? When you get old, it doesn't mean you can't have fun. I'm so sick of buying like adult things. I always wanted one because growing up in the 70s and 80s, I could play, Asteroids and Phoenix and Paperboy for a half an hour. But a pinball machine, 3 balls could go right down the middle of the chutes, and that's a quarter.
That's the worst. And there goes your quarter. How many machines we talking?
Currently have 13.
I was thinking there's like 100 machines.
I wish there were back in the day, but a couple things have happened. You have termites here that have completely destroyed most of the machines that I saw. And a lot of the people just use them machines and just dump them, where they don't want to get the parts to fix them.
Oh, really?
And so I've seen the photographs. There was a guy that had 100 machines at one time, but sure. I'm finding the ones that survive.
It's not like Cuba with the cars. Everybody just keeps repairing them. They're just getting rid of them.
My good friend, no, unfortunately not.
Yeah.
The only thing they really saved were the motherboards of certain games, like let's say an Asteroids or Tempest or something. But no, I found the private collectors or the guy that actually still had his bodega where he had like 50 machines, and I drove 4 hours to Perez Zeledone.
Mhm.
And I was with my buddies, Tommy, Joey, and Billy with the truck,
Wow.
handful of that, moving crap, and just grabbing them for, $200. Arnold Schwarzenegger Last Action Hero, that's worth $5,000 if you can get it working.
Yep.
And so my oldest machine, Doc, is a 1970 Bally's Camelot, and the newest is an NBA Fast Break. It's a Bally's. It's a mid-90s, and I've everything in between. But if I may make a suggestion for your audience, for a starter, you should be looking at the machines from the 70s and maybe early 80s. Why? They're still electromechanical, which was the wheel, so it's more contacts compared to CPUs or cards, because the machines that I would get here, everything behind the marquee was corroded. Why even try to pay Don Fernando to fix it? They're done. So you get in touch with Marco's Specialties or another pinball specialty shop. You give them the numbers, and you get the electric, the sound. You get all the different boards. And when you put that in, 90% of the machine works. The rest you need to do is just fix a cable or two and change a light.
That's pretty cool.
And so the machines that I prefer from the 70s, and I'll tell you why. Oh my God. It's the last generation where they would paint the play fields. Now they do laminates or stickers.
Oh,
and
yeah.
the marquees were original art compared to now, which are photographs. You did have the wheels and the certain sound, but the play field was much more open. Today, they reduced the play field by about 50% with all the stuff they have in there, and it's great, but it's just bells and whistles. You have an open play field, beautiful art, 5 or 6 amazing targets, maybe a ramp or two, but it's an easy play game. Easy play.
Yeah.
And the side art is beautiful, and you can get them for under $1,000.
Wow.
So instead of spending all this heavy money to try to fix these very expensive new machines, go get a no-name like a Camelot or an Express Player like I do. I don't have Captain America or Spider-Man or Superman or Flash Gordon, but it's oh, what a passion. They're gorgeous.
Up here, I don't know, maybe Costa Rica probably doesn't have them, but you've been in the States enough. Up here, there's a new, I don't know how old these businesses are, but there's a new trend of arcades that are opening up, which have like, you pay a cover to get into the place, and then all the games are free to play. You don't have no quarters, no tokens, nothing like that. It's a fantastic business model, especially for a guy like me who grew up, in the 70s and 80s playing these games. I get to play as much as I want. I don't have to drop a quarter in. I pay like, $10 to get into the place, and I could play for hours. I have a 7-year-old daughter, and I love to bring her to these places because it doesn't cost a lot to get her to play some video games, and the games that she gravitates towards the most are the pinball machines. She will play pinball for hours at these places, just going from machine to machine to machine, and it's just fantastic. Let me get, this kind of gets back to our discussion earlier a little bit about doing things in person versus doing things virtual. Pinball is tangible. There's something there. There's a metal ball. There's other doohickeys and stuff. You get to press buttons. You get to push flippers, right? You get to have actual interactions with the thing that you're playing with. Whereas video games, you're lucky if there's a joystick. You're lucky. Your most of it is your thumbs. You're just pressing some buttons, and so I think there's some consistency in not only your collection of pinball, but everything else you've discussed with the way you run your business and your life and so forth. I really do see that tie into that. Now I think about it.
You're right. And Doc, just want to throw a quick plug out there for Starfighters Arcade in Mesa, Arizona. The owners are really great. I think they have a larger pinball collection than the Pinball Hall of Fame in Vegas. But my point being is they have hundreds of machines, all of them. Tron, Gorf, Robotron, Satan's Hollow. You want me to start naming? I can name them all. I mean, the original Space Invaders and the ones with the color as well. Yeah, you get to see the marquees, the beautiful, big, bulky machines and the artwork. You know what these machines do as well? And you studied psychology. It allows me to decompress.
Mm-hmm.
And so on Sundays, besides washing my convertible, and I hit the gym every day, I like a pinball marathon. I like to do this because there is hand-eye coordination. There is stimulation there. In fact, when the agents get off the phone, instead of having a cigarette or looking at their phone, if they play pinball, it's almost like runners that run in place at a stoplight.
Mm-hmm.
They're still warmed up. They're still moving. And so there's nothing wrong with working other parts of your brain, like in music, like in art. And you're talking about hand-eye coordination and timing and the lights. And say what you want, but like Stephen King's the movie Christine, these machines have energy. You're going to call me crazy? Yes, they do. Because when they're happy, the bumpers, and they'll give you the perfect shots, and it transmits that energy. They said it in Pinball Wizard. You feel the game. You're part of the machine. The guy was deaf, dumb, and blind and could still play the machine on feel alone and instinct.
Yeah.
And it is one of the few games that you're severely interacting with this machine, especially my older ones, which were electromechanical. There is a connection there compared to any game that you want to compare with today. So your daughter has got the best taste. You let her know that I'm very proud of her and keep playing those games.
Oh, yeah. No, I take her all the time, encourage her. She's gotten really good, too. Really good. I remember when I first was teaching her how to do it, maybe it might have been a couple of years ago when she was around 5 or so, but I was teaching her how to do it. And, you know, shoot the ball up and we'll go in, and then it was just straight down the middle. I'm like, oh, you got to hit the flippers.
I dropped that ball.
Now she's a pro. There's another thing about your bio that seems really out of place, and I thought I would just kind of ask you about this because this is
Sure.
so yeah, you wrote a song and produced this song, and then you had the Gary Beers from the band In Excess, the Australian rock band. Like, you actually got him to play on your song. How did that come about?
Well, doctor, when you travel, you make friends. And the first friend I made in Costa Rica was a gentleman by the name of Roberto Ruiz, otherwise known as Igni Faroki. 1978, his band started here. He opened up for Depeche Mode. He's one of the top rock bands with San Lucas y La Radio. So he's made his mark. Anyway, my good friend said, hey, Ricardo, I'm going to write a song about you falling in love with your wife, Grace, and working at a call center. I go, let's do it. So he and Eduardo Dorian, the lead singer, and Harold Webb, the bassist, the original bassist, they wrote and produced and played the song, and we filmed something here at the call center. So then I'm on YouTube, and I like to follow my favorite band In Excess and their shenanigans. And the next thing you know, Gary Beers is on a podcast interview talking about ggbbasses.com out of Los Angeles. He produces custom-made basses. So I checked out his site, see what's up with Gary, and one of them says, you can hire Gary. And I looked at the price, and I go, I'd pay that just to talk to him. And so I wrote him this email, and thank God the first paragraph was business-like, because maybe my 7 pages after that was how much I loved his band. But
Yeah.
he wrote me back, and because I qualified, I had a song, and I mentioned a song, and you can hire him to. There were multiple things he could do. He could just play the bass on it, which is fine, or you could pay a little extra money for another element, where he could create some funk and a different style along with the song. And then the third thing, which you have to get, is the performance video, of course. Plus, the writing back on the email was more than enough money just for that alone. I would have paid just for him to write me and say thank you.
Yeah.
And what a generous man with his time. And he was professional, never pressed for anything. It was probably one of the easiest transactions. I was starstruck. I tried to severely calm myself down. I called him Gary at the end compared to Mr. Beers, you know. But we combined it, and he did a beautiful funk version of this song, which overlapped the track, showed me how to do it. He wrote me all the instructions, and we produced it. And it was a really fun experience. But I tell you what, man, if you're ever going to be a producer or director of rock musicians, actors, models, it is a pain. That's why I know the number one rule in Hollywood is, are they easy to work with? I mean, it was impossible. It was worse than kindergarten. It was like preschool. And so,
Talent is tough. It's tough.
but I got it done. So, yeah, my friend, we produced a fun song. I got an amazing experience, surreal experience to communicate with Gary Beers, who did an amazing job. And yeah, it was kind of fun, man. I'm glad you brought it up.
Yeah.
By the way, the song is called Shine Like the Sun.
Shine Like the Sun. Yeah, we'll link to it at the bottom of this, because I know people want to check it out. But Shine Like the Sun. I was a big In Excess fan growing up. I mean, I remember it is, them and you even mentioned Depeche Mode. Oh my God, you talk about my high school years with the floppy black hair and stuff. I was that era. I was at Midnight Oil. All these bands that came out around that time frame. I was that era. And so when I saw In Excess, well, what? I've got to talk about this. So that's really interesting. What was the band from Costa Rica that you mentioned?
Igni Faroki. And they're so talented. Who writes songs? And it's a gift that just keeps on giving.
Yeah.
So anyway, it was a lot of fun to be part of that.
I'm a comedian. I'm a writer. Many things, but like nothing connects with an audience as quite as well as music does. It just sticks with you. It's in your soul. It's in your it stays with your emotions. I can make somebody laugh and they'll have a good time momentarily, but they forget about me 5 minutes later. Even if they read my book and they like it, and an hour later, it's like they forgot what they read, or it just doesn't stick. But a song, man, I got an In Excess song in my head right now, thanks to this conversation. You know what I mean? It's it just has a way of sticking with you. So, were you ever artistically inclined to create something like that?
No, trust me. I wish I could have been Michael Hutchence, but that didn't happen. I'm more of a writer. Is what I do. I like to work with clay. That's my artistic side. I can mold things with clay, maybe a little bit of drawing. But I tell you what, when you sponsor a band, you realize they don't make any money. And it's also very expensive to produce music and to put them out to play some gigs. In fact, they played the Hard Rock Cafe here before it closed. That was an amazing show. Mm-hmm. And what do? You drop a couple dollars down so they can play the songs that night. You can record it. You can bring clients to it. The agents can come to it and enjoy it. It's an evening out. Yeah, but it's costing you some money. Well, where do you want to spend your money? I'm contributing to the arts in a sense. Yeah. If you really think about it, and plus the company pays for it, damn it. So everyone calm down. Get some more cheese on your burger, doctor. Just relax. I got you covered.
Yeah, it's all going through the call center.
But they're so exceptionally, they're very appreciative. And they say, people come to the shows, they'll put their $20 down and they'll buy me a drink. But how many produce a song? How many will actually pay for the London Room, or El Deo, or the Hard Rock Cafe? And maybe between me and you, Doc, it allowed me to get to enjoy the rock and roll lifestyle for a little bit, ride with them in the limo, get to be there while they're producing the song and see what that's like. And so I don't want that it's something I don't think, it's such a trade-off because they have to earn a living. They got to get jobs, but then they never have time to practice with each other, or they're strung out. They're too tired. They can't play a gig. And it's just, they're torn. Yep. They're torn. They wish they could do it all day, every day, but they have these other lives doing IT or telemarketing calls. And so I got to see the non-glamorous side of it that nobody ever gets to see.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. It gives you have an opportunity to get some insight into that world. The only thing that I wish I had I wish I was podcasting earlier, because I used to hang out with people like Robin Williams in San Francisco, and he, of course he would have said yes to a podcast or an interview or something. He was just so nice, but just the fact to even have known and met people like that is pretty great. So I absolutely understand where you're coming from with hiring the guy from In Excess, producing the song, and just the joy that kind of experience brings to your life.
Say what you want, but I believe that people transfer energy through thought, through touch, writing, spoken word. And the fact that these 6 members of the band who've spent those 20 years together, 1/6 of that then did something and took his time.
Yeah.
It's like a dream come true. But how amazing is that to be thinking of these old movies and things? But I tell you what, it's the simple stuff in life that make you happy now.
Yeah, yeah.
And you understand where your priorities are, especially when you get a little bit older.
It's true.
And through natural filtration, your real friends are going to stick around and want to be with you, doctor.
Yeah. Well, I got to wrap it up. We're getting close to my time, and I got to wrap it up. But before I do, is there anything else you want to say? Any parting message that you want to make sure you convey to my audience?
Of course. I always like to tell people not to be very hard on themselves. There's comparisons, but the most important thing is to be able to look at your own eyes at the end of any day and realize, regardless of the outcome, you did things a certain way. And you should make your bed in the morning to keep that circle complete. If you can eat well, if you can exercise, and I'm not trying to sound like your mother, but I'm just letting you know physiologically, there's a lot of things that can give you extra power during the day. And so if you have that structure and discipline, regardless of naysayers and people pulling you left and right, you might hold the course, and it might take longer. And it shouldn't be a death march, doctor. There's forced marches from time to time, but what do you expect a 12-round fight to be?
Mm-hmm.
And look at all the years you traveled. That didn't happen in a day. You gotta realize that the most beautiful things in life may take a little bit longer. And if you have that sort of patience with yourself, then you might be able to have that sort of ability to last longer. And but thank you. I really appreciated being on your show today. I like sharing ideas. We have so much in common. Listen, my man, when you were here, I'm going to pinball you to death. Be prepared for that.
I can't wait. Listen, I really appreciate it. I love you. I love the closing message. You absolutely do come across as someone who does live a lifestyle which is consistent with your beliefs, and I appreciate that. And you've seen some success, of course, related to the hard work that you put in, and you know, sticking true to yourself. And I really appreciate that. How often do you get back to Philly?
Every 5 years for my reunion. I go to Arizona more often. That's where my family lives. But real quick, I do a second language scholarship for Abington High School. So graduating senior, I'll pay for their books freshman year. I've been doing that for 8 years since my buddy Angelo Barrios, the principal, got promoted to superintendent of Bucks County. But point being is, look at that circle being complete. If they never gave me college recommendation letters, I would have never gotten into Arizona to study Spanish.
That's true.
Doctor, you need to be humble from time to time. And you need to thank those that said, go, doctor, go, Richard, go along the way. And so it's a pleasure for me, once again, to give back to people that believed in me when I was most vulnerable. When you're young.
All right, Richard. Well, thank you so much for spending some time with me. It was lovely getting to know you a little bit. I appreciate that, and I thank you for all you do and sharing your stories with us. And those of you who are listening or watching, however you're consuming the podcast, thank you guys for following along. This has been another episode of On the Road with Dr. Brian. Thanks. Bye-bye.
I'm here, I'm there, I'm everywhere. Blues, women, and blues. I'm here, I'm there, I'm everywhere. I'm an asshole.